You're listening to episode 41 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Stacy Claxton all about how we can use emotional freedom techniques like tapping to overcome past traumas and to live a life of fearless purpose. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Hey there, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld, I'm your host as always, and today we have a very different episode than usual. Usually the way that I interview clients and different people in the nutrition industry is that I ask them questions and they answer them and we have more of a dialogue and a conversation. And today's episode is a little different. We definitely start off with conversation, but we actually transition into a guided tapping practice that can actually help you experience emotional freedom and resolution of past trauma. It's a really cool episode and I'm super excited about it. And I think you will want to come back to this one over and over. So on today's episode, I'm interviewing Stacy Claxton. Stacy is a transformational coach and integrative health practitioner who helps stuck people find freedom and flow. She guides growth seekers, heart-centered healers, and embodied leaders through their biggest physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, professional, and financial blocks to discover their boundless inner power. But she adds the missing piece most mindset trainers and coaches neglect: body-centered tools to rewire the nervous system for lasting change. Her practice blends ancient and modern modalities, including Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, breathwork, meditation, somatic work, trauma healing, prenatal and postpartum care, emotional freedom techniques, also known as EFT, functional diagnostic nutrition, and more. An educator and an entrepreneur, Stacy combines private client work with writing, speaking, facilitating small groups, and leading live transformational events. She strives to bring heart-centered, whole-person healing to a hurting, head-driven world. So I think that'll give you a little idea of what to expect with Stacy. She's super well-spoken and did a great job of leading me through the tapping practice, and she's going to lead you as well. Make sure that you go to my website at lauraschoenfeldrd.com and head over to episode 41 if you want to get the guide to tapping that Stacy is generously sharing with our audience and listeners. And if you want to have that downloaded before you listen to the episode, that may help you make the tapping process a little bit easier. But no worries, if you're driving, if you're taking a walk, you can do this anywhere. And I think the cool thing about what Stacy teaches is that it's free and it's always available to you. So without further ado, I'm so excited to have with me on the show, Stacy Claxton. All right, everybody. I am so excited to have with me on the show today, Stacy Claxton. Welcome to the podcast, Stacy.
Thanks for having me, Laura. It's such a joy to be here.
Yeah, and I know you and I have had some conversations, mostly via email, I would say, usually in response to some of the more controversial faith-based emails that I would send out that I know resonated with you. So I'm really glad to finally have you on the show. All right, so just to get started, I would love for you to tell us your story so that the audience can get to know you better. How did you get into the world of integrative health with a specific focus on the nervous system?
It started with a migraine, actually, one of those really excruciating migraines where you just want to check out of life because it hurts so much. And it's not just your head, it's your whole body. You're nauseous, you're uncomfortable, and it hurts to think. And you can't imagine any scenario that would make it better. And that's just the beginning, because it's going to get worse, because this is part of your story. It's been common and an inconvenient part of your life. And so about 10 years ago, I found myself with one of those kind of migraines. And I was on this flight home from a tumultuous trip, and there wasn't really any escape from it. I was 30,000 feet in the air, and I closed my eyes and I tried to seek some solace in the silence. And into that silence, I sensed real clearly God's unexpected direction. And it was take a Sabbath year. It was that simple. And it was a new thought for me, because I hadn't really thought about taking a Sabbath year. And there is a historical precedent for it. We're told about observing not only this weekly Sabbath, but also periods of rest on a yearly basis. And I realized that 1 year from that moment, from that excruciating migraine, I was going to come upon my 6th year at my current job in publishing. And so it was my 7th year, it would be a Sabbath year. And so in an act of faith, in that moment, I put a date on the calendar a full year in advance. Last day of work, I put it on the calendar. I didn't know what I'd do, how I'd get there. I loved my job. I was an essential part of the company. But God was faithful in providing answers, clarity, and a real plan. And so 1 year later, I said, farewell. And I quit my job. I packed up and moved out. I took this 4-month road trip that was supposed to land me at a year-long course of study in Ayurvedic medicine, because migraines weren't the only thing I'd experienced. I had my own series of health challenges, and I'm sure many listening can relate. And they led me to empower myself through diet and lifestyle and other changes. And I felt like, this is the obvious step. I am going to turn this passion for health into this purposeful career. So I was so on fire. I was ready to learn and take action. And I was on fire for this big mission. I'm going to help the masses reclaim their health. And then I had another excruciating moment. And I was trail running down this mountain less than 2 months into that road trip, before I'd even begun my course of study, and I lost my footing and landed in the ER with a fractured ankle. And suddenly, I wasn't blazing this trail out west. I was confronting this distressing reality that I can't move when all my plans hinge on me moving. I'd left home. I packed up. I was unemployed, uninsured. I was starting a new course. I stepped out in faith, and here I was with these derailed plans. And in the midst of that and the surgery and the recovery, I had time to contemplate what it really means to step out into faith and set foot on a healing path. And that was really my first glimpse into what it means to be the kind of practitioner I am today, what it means to face our pain, our past, our struggles, our stories, everything that really creates and undergirds these physical ailments that life throws us. And because this had been a pattern in my life. I was this walking testament to accidents and injuries and physical self-sabotage. And that pivotal moment planted the seeds for something bigger related to trauma and reenactment and the nervous system and everything that I do today, though I wasn't ready to see it yet. I wasn't ready to go into those deeper levels of healing. And I know this is true for me, and it's probably true for many out there, true for many people's stories, that sometimes we're not yet ready to hear it. We're not yet ready to receive the message. Sometimes we need to go through this learning process and do some self-discovery first. And so that's what I did. I needed to explore the physical healing first. I needed to study and dive in. And so on the other side of that road trip and the healing and into my Sabbath year, and then a few more years later, I turned this into a full-blown calling in health. I'd studied Ayurvedic medicine. I'd studied yoga and postpartum care, perinatal traditions. I'd studied modern functional nutrition, some of the things that overlap in our training, Laura, I know. So I'd explored the Eastern traditions and the Western science. And I was well-versed in the diet and the lifestyle and the lab testing and supplementation, all these things that we practice all the time. And when I started practicing, I got results. They weren't dramatic. And so I wanted to know why. And you probably asked yourself that question with perplexing cases, like, why aren't they getting better? What am I doing wrong? I'm this smart, data-driven practitioner. Am I missing something? what's holding me and others back from this deeper healing that I know is possible. And it took me far too long to discover this simple truth. And that's, we often say sick, stuck, stressed, and self-sabotaging, not for lack of more knowledge, but for lack of awareness in this one critical area. And that's the emotional pain that's lodged deep in the nervous system. And this is often as true for those with chronic illness, with debilitating symptoms, or perplexing, undiagnosed, unexplained cases, whatever that may be. But it's also true for wellness entrepreneurs, other people who aren't making the massive impact in their life that they know they can. Often this emotional freedom is a universal root cause when it's not present. And that's really the light bulb moment that moved me from the overall integrative health space into transformational coaching with a focus on the nervous system. Because now I guide clients and my groups really from these big inner blocks to that boundless power that they have access to and they didn't even realize it. And so instead of creating rigid protocols where I started, I now lead clients more to their own inner guide, that infinitely wise voice within. And so I don't consider myself necessarily the teacher, the healer, but more of a lamp to that teacher and healer within, to illuminate those obscure places where their own inner intelligence, or the Holy Spirit, if you will, is already providing instruction. And then I add that missing piece that so many mindset trainers and coaches neglect, which is these body-centered tools to resolve trauma and rewire the nervous system for lasting change. And it's radically changed my practice. I request fewer lab tests and write fewer supplement protocols, and I get better results because the human being is so capable of healing once given permission and the right combination of tools. And so that's a snapshot of my story, my ongoing story. And the beautiful shot is not only do I find myself free from those migraines and symptoms and some of the other injuries that have plagued me for so long, but I'm also engaged in really meaningful and life-giving, life-changing, and so satisfying work.
That's so cool. And I feel like the topic of trauma has come up in so many of the different areas of study that I've been just in the last year or two, both in the health space and then also in the business and entrepreneurship space. I know that a number of my business coaching mastermind clients look at the impacts of trauma on things like gut health and hormone health, that kind of thing. And then on the other hand, the entrepreneurial mentors and coaches that I work with also are bringing that into the conversation as well, about how experience of trauma can actually affect how you show up in your business and the actions that you take and, you know, the results you can get, because the results a lot of times are reflective of the mindset and the actions in combination. So it's something that I definitely have a lot of interest in. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be really interested to hear about this, this deeper work as well. So I know that most of my listeners are here to learn about health and like physical health, mental health, spiritual health, that kind of thing. And I probably have some listeners who also want to think about how their mindset can affect their success in life in general, whether it's their business or elsewhere. How does trauma affect a person's ability to improve both their health and their mindset?
Yeah. And as you acknowledged, Laura, the effect is huge. And the fact that you're seeing it not only in the health space, but also in the business mastermind space means that this is a critical piece of the conversation that we haven't been acknowledging for quite some time, or maybe pockets of us have, but now it's becoming more mainstream. And I certainly didn't realize it at first. Sure, I knew trauma affects the nervous system, and the nervous system is involved in the stress response, and stress affects health. But I considered it more secondary. I would focus on the diet and the lifestyle, the exercise, sleep, and all of that first. And as a functional-based practitioner, I relied a lot on lab testing to find these measurable hidden sources of stress. The hormone imbalances, as you mentioned, the gut pathogens, the nutrient deficiencies, the heavy metal toxicity. But what I realized, and what everyone in this space is coming to acknowledge, is that often the most potent hidden stressors aren't going to turn up on those lab tests. They're going to evade our detective work because they fall under this umbrella term of trauma. And for some, it may feel like this nebulous term. And what exactly does it mean? But thanks to lots of pioneers in the field, and a few of them being Bessel van der Kolk, Peter Levine, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, likely things that your audience has heard of, we're realizing that there's this type of trauma that affects everyone and might even underlie most, if not all, other stressors. And it's really that important. And so when we talk about this trauma and its effect on health and mindset, we're not just talking about a physical injury, we're talking about a mental or emotional wound that remains after any physical injury has healed. And trauma of this type is simply the residue of an experience that's not fully processed at the time that it happens. And so for some reason, this experience overwhelms the central nervous system, often because it's too much, too fast, or too soon. And so it isn't necessarily what happens to us, the events themselves, but what happens inside of us. And we can't take it all in. We can't digest it, comprehend it, or integrate it. And so as a result, it then alters the way we remember and react to that experience now. It leaves this current bodily imprint of the past, and then our bodies keep replaying and reenacting an attempt to resolve it. And that's when we feel stuck. And so regardless of how and when it occurs, it creates these rules, these unquestioned truths in our body that block the energy that we need to be most fully alive and healthy and successful in whatever we're pursuing. And without even realizing it, it forms this unconscious foundational reality about who we are and who we're not, about what's safe, what's not safe, about what we deserve, what we don't deserve, about what it's okay to feel or be or do or have, about how much care and respect and health and money and success we're allowed to experience. And so naturally, this is going to play out in all of our life, in our health, in our business, in our behaviors, in our self-talk. And that's often why an underlying trauma keeping us trapped is the single most potent root cause for creating an unhealthy reality. And this has grave cost to our power and potential, not to mention just our joy. But one piece I do like to mention here, especially for those not as familiar with the trauma conversation, is it's not necessarily a big, huge, life-shattering, big T trauma. Often the most destructive are the more chronic, unrecognized small T traumas. And some examples could include prenatal or birth trauma, and we're not consciously going to remember that. We also have attachment trauma when we don't have the proper emotional care or relationships, especially with caregivers during our early years. And then sometimes as children, we learn that it's safer to be invisible or silent or always putting others' needs first. Or maybe there's this specific event that happens, say, at the playground or in the classroom that leaves us feeling ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed, not enough. And we carry the body memory of that into adulthood without even knowing it. And these traumatic incidents might seem really trivial from our adult perspective, but our child self with a brain and a nervous system that's not fully developed absorb that experience very, very differently in a way that may be compromising our health and well-being and success now. And we tend to gloss over it or downplay it or not even be aware of it. And so we might not know how seriously then that trauma is affecting our health.
So it sounds like from those examples, it would be fairly unlikely that someone would escape childhood without having any sort of traumatic, little t especially, traumatic experience. Is that right?
That's an accurate statement. And that's why all of us can benefit from doing this deep inner work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to actually ask you to explain that. So I'm glad you jumped ahead and did it for me, because I think a lot of times people, when they hear that word trauma, they think, oh, like, major death of a loved one or, some kind of physical assault or something like that. And they're like, well, that didn't happen to me, so I don't have trauma to deal with, that kind of thing. So thinking about maybe it was somebody being mean to me on the playground or the way that my parents treated me. And I think something that's always really fascinated me is the concept of more like generational trauma, where trauma that maybe your parent or grandparent experienced then gets passed down to you because of the way that they respond to the trauma that they had. And it, like, I don't know, from a biblical perspective, it's kind of like that generational curse kind of thing where something happens down the line and you don't realize that you're being affected by it. But it's something that, again, it didn't even have to happen to you specifically. It's just in your family. So that's one of the reasons I know, everybody can benefit from understanding this, because like you said, nobody gets to adulthood without having had some kind of negative experience that shapes the way you respond to things.
You're absolutely right with that. And not only is it the experiences that shape us in our present reality, but generational patterns. And absolutely the work that we do to heal from that can heal our family line, as well as heal our future family and move us forward. And there's something beautiful in being able to break those generational curses and be the agent of change, empowered change for our family line. So yes, absolutely. And sometimes, like you acknowledge too, many are saying, well, I didn't have that big event happen to me, so it must not be that bad. And I hear that all the time. And so for those out there listening, sometimes it's good to know that if there are certain things coming up in your life, there's probably a trauma, even if you're not aware of it. And like you said, Laura, it might be generational, it might be in your own history. Regardless, if you notice some of these key characteristics of trauma, it's worth probing deeper. And one of them, and I know you talk about this a lot, is kind of self-talk and kind of what is your predominant experience inside your head, because trauma changes the brain. It changes not only how we think and what we think about, but our very ability to think at all. And so if we find ourselves in these negative thought loops and we can't get out, if we notice changes in our memory and how we're able to process, that's a good indication that maybe there is something traumatic to work on. So that could be an indicator, especially if you're not aware of a trauma in your life. But there are a lot of other pieces too. And one being that trauma tends to pull us out of the present moment. And I know that's a big experience that people often have. There's this compulsive and unconscious drive to replay and resolve that original trauma. And so if you're stuck in the same pattern, again, a compulsive behavior or an addictive pattern, something you just can't seem to shake, or if you tend to dissociate or not be able to stay fully present, that again can be a sign that there's something deeper here worth exploring. But there are plenty of other ways that we can use trauma as an indicator. We can see it at play in our life, whether we're aware of it or not. And that's kind of the people that we become. It shapes our reality and our identity, our personality, our patterns, like I said, our beliefs, our addictions, our emotional reactions. So if any of these feel like, wow, that seems extreme, that emotional reaction is extreme, that fear feels absolutely true, there's no wavering on it. Again, that could be a fear rooted in a generational fear that you've internalized. And so acknowledging all aspects of our lives, our identity, our behaviors, our patterns, our presence, but also the overwhelming experience that we have. And those who have experienced trauma often have this sense of isolation, separation, and disconnection from themselves, their bodies, their emotions, feelings, their potential, like they're not able to really do what they want in the world. And that's often where entrepreneurship becomes the biggest flashlight, kind of spotlight into trauma, when we're not able to step into our potential, or there's struggles in our relationships or with other people, or we feel disconnected from the world. And that's, again, another indicator, as is feelings of unsafety, distrust, powerlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, voicelessness, being alone and stuck in our pain and feeling like it's fixed. Again, like there's an absolute here, like we can only see what we've always seen, and we can only repeat what we've always done. All of those, regardless of whether you're aware of it, might indicate that there's some trauma present. And the upshot of all of that, and what I like to share after that litany of what we might be looking for and experiencing, is the real clincher in that trauma isn't fixed, even if it feels that way. And even if it feels like, wow, after hearing all that, it's inescapable. It's in my family line. It's in my past, my childhood. What am I to do? it's not fixed. And we have the power to heal and change. We're not doomed to that endless traumatic reenactment. We can get unstuck. And that's where I found emotional, energetic, somatic-based transformational tools can be so instrumental in helping heal these areas of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, and before we jump into the techniques, because I'm very excited to learn about those myself, I'm wondering from a physical health perspective, if there's any, and this, it could be a no as an answer. So, I'm just curious, are there any physical ailments or health conditions that you find to be very correlated with a history of trauma? Like, are there certain physical manifestations that seem to happen more often in your experience?
There absolutely are. And undoubtedly, any health issue could be related to a trauma. But especially those who experienced a childhood trauma, often they'll report, I had digestive symptoms when I was young. I had a lot of nausea or indigestion, or that's been a real struggle. And it's often because there's so much tension and holding. There's a sense of the nervous system's hypervigilant all the time that digestion gets compromised, basic body functions, and even other chronic pain. I hear a lot about migraines because often that's associated with tension and holding. And so any area essentially that functional medicine really specializes in it, the gut health, the hormones, and chronic pain can be real indicators of trauma.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that autoimmune disease tends to be connected as well. And they've found that in research.
I'm glad you pointed that out. That's another big one. And sometimes it is related to a digestive type situation, but autoimmunity is often self-attacking self. And this sense of, oh, I internalized so much pain. The only way I can cope with it is to turn it back on myself so that I feel safe in the world. Because if the world's unsafe, that feels worse than me being unsafe in my own body. And so, yes, there's often this traumatic reenactment that turns into autoimmune conditions. Really good point, Laura. Yeah.
Well, and I always think, I love the example that you gave, that generally the conditions that functional medicine tends to focus on are the ones that a lot of times a conventional approach doesn't work for. And I can only imagine that using medication for these conditions, and not that I'm hopefully my listeners know that I'm not anti-medication, but only using medication for these symptoms is just kind of allowing you to ignore the underlying potential trauma that could be there that's stimulating the problem in the first place. So it isn't as easy, I'm sure, to uncover trauma as it is to pop a pill. But, the people that want to have that long lasting healing, they're the ones that are going to look for beyond just medication as a solution to these problems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'd love to talk a little bit, actually a lot of bit about your the methods that you use with your clients. And I know that you referred to them when we talked before this interview as emotional freedom techniques. So can you tell the audience, what are emotional freedom techniques?
Yes. So emotional freedom techniques, also called EFT or tapping, are a set of techniques that are really actually very simple at core. And they are some of the simplest, most practical, and most effective methods that I've found for telling the body it's safe now. And that's really key because essentially trauma is an issue of safety. We don't feel safe in our bodies. We don't feel safe in our environment. That triggers the stress response and it causes us to disconnect. But when we have some easy tools that tell the body it's safe, even in the face of a big stressor, we can then calm down, we can reconnect, and we can give our subconscious permission to express what's really under there, what's been repressed. And in that process, we short circuit this traumatic reenactment and release the body's long-held truth so that we can free our brain then to step into the present and future with a new perspective rather than perpetuate this past pattern. And so that's the core of tools like EFT because it allows these powerful shifts to happen. It reestablishes that connection. And when that connection is made, safety is there, healing is possible, and freedom is found. And that's why EFT stands for emotional freedom techniques, because it's this tool of radical self-healing, self-empowerment, self-care, self-love that liberates the emotional root cause of our suffering so that the body can return to its natural state, which is safety and connection. And I consider it an easy hands-on, and it's literally hands-on because we're going to be using our hands, a hands-on way to drop into this meditative place where we can tune our spirit to that infinitely wise inner guide, and we can listen to that still small voice within. And EFT does that really, really quickly. And so we simply take our fingertips and we tap on and stimulate points on the body that correspond to the endpoints of energy meridians. And in that way, it's very connected to the ancient Chinese acupuncture system. These meridians are known to correspond to organs and systems and energy potential in our body. And as we do this, as we put our fingertips on these endpoints, we focus on unpleasant emotions and sensations, things that tend to stress the body out. And we can also pose questions to the subconscious. And this has a number of really critical effects. It first off calms down the nervous system, again, even in the face of a big stressor. And that gives us safe access to our emotions. It restores the body's natural energy flow. It activates the immune system. It reestablishes our hormone balance, and it actually rewires the brain. So tapping or EFT becomes much more than simply a stress relieving technique. It actually shifts the body to a healing state where some amazing results are possible.
Awesome. Well, I know that you were mentioning before we jumped on the call today that we could do a little or maybe not impromptu, but a example tapping process together. Yeah. And yes. Just to give the listeners a sense of what that's like. And I was mentioning to Stacy before we started recording that I was exposed to this when I was in high school. So this would have been like early 2000s. One of my mom's friends actually, I think, would have considered herself an EFT practitioner. And I remember when I was a teenager, like the kind of things we were working on were, it's funny to think back. It was like sports performance and volleyball and stuff, and like trying to like, manage stress with academics and sports and that kind of thing. So it's just kind of interesting to think back like, oh, wow, who would have known 15 years ago that I'd be like talking about this again? But I'm excited to do this with you and happy to have you lead the way.
Sure. And you raise a good point there, because EFT can be used for myriad concerns or questions or performance even. And so some people do use it to enhance performance, to prepare, to do their best. But there are a lot of other ways it can be used. And just to give listeners a sense before we jump into a specific example, the ways they may use it in their own lives could run the gamut. It could be physical pain. It could be emotional issues like anxiety, depression, grief, fear. It can be used for basic stress relief if you have weight challenges or health goals, health diagnoses, phobias, cravings, addictions, compulsive behaviors, limiting beliefs. It can be used for specific things I know that you work with, Laura, whether it's related to disordered eating, compulsive exercise, infertility, working with women and hormone balance, or really unexplained intractable health conditions. But like I said, it can also be used to really dive in deep and heal trauma, and not only personal trauma, but intergenerational trauma, and really build that resilience so that it can change how you show up in your relationships, how you show up in your finances, your profession, the kind of confidence that you have. It can help with behavior change and really your own spiritual growth too. That's another aspect that has really been instrumental, and just helping you tap into, quite literally, the creativity and inspiration and joy and that greater peace and sense of purpose that we're all entitled to just as part of being human. And so, yeah, I just wanted to set that parameter, since you mentioned using it for volleyball performance, that yes, even if we use a specific example today just for practice, you're welcome to take it into any sphere of your life because it can have a benefit there. And one of the things that I love so much about it, and we'll experience this here in a moment, is that it doesn't really take much at all. And according to research, a single hour of tapping can actually change 72 genes and reduce the stress hormone cortisol by 24%. And so that's a significant measurable effect on body systems and on actual DNA. And so doing this process, even though it looks silly and feels funny at first, we're actually sending a healing message to our nervous system. We're upregulating our immunity, we're restoring hormone balance, we're actually creating lasting change in the body. And we're doing this literally with the power at our own fingertips that's available to us really anytime. And so that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to help you learn the sequence. I love that you haven't explored this in a while, Laura, so you can be a good stand-in for listeners who may be new to the practice. I'm going to teach us the sequence slide, but I want to explain one thing first, because this is a key principle of tapping and it comes up quite a lot. But as we move our fingertips over this sequence of points, we're going to use emotions, sensations, feelings, and even words to deepen that experience. And we'll start with these, what I call the quote unquote negative rounds, where we feel and we voice all the heavy stuff in our life. So that might be actual physical pain. It might be hurt, harsh words, negative self-talk, destructive beliefs, memories, anything that feels really uncomfortable and unpleasant. And so we honor that, we express it, and then as we're ready, then we shift into the possibility of change. And then we can have some quote unquote positive rounds where we explore new insights, new emotions, beliefs, and behaviors that we really want to invite into our life. But I like to explain that negative and positive, I put in quotation marks, because we don't want to assign value, judgment to our experience. Our emotions and sensations aren't bad or negative. They're simply cluing us into some core truth about our embodied experience as human beings in the world, and all have their place in the tapping process. But what I hear quite often is, but wait a minute, Stacy, I don't want to voice all the quote unquote negative, all that unpleasant stuff. Isn't that going to make me attract more of it or think more about it? And I don't want to do that. And it's a valid question, but no, quite the contrary. When we first tap to voice and reduce the charge on what subconsciously we're already speaking over ourselves and living out in our life all the time, when we actually can calm the charge on that, that's when the shift happens. It's not when we deny the existence of those unpleasant thoughts or feelings or symptoms, because they don't go away that way. And I know I've experienced that in my own life. And just as an analogy, I often point to a garden, and we can look at a garden or a plot of earth that's not yet cultivated and say, oh, there are no weeds there, or, oh, those weeds, they're really beautiful flowers. But that's not going to change the existence of weeds or their true nature. But when we can actually get in the dirt and get into the soil and acknowledge them and pull them up and yank them out, then we can make space to plant the seeds of the healthy plants that we want in our life. And the same is true with tapping. When we pull the weeds from our past, we acknowledge the pain, we speak it aloud, then we're often left with more of this healthier, more vibrant, empowered, integrated self. And that's a key to tapping, that acknowledging these uncomfortable sensations isn't going to make them stronger. We can give voice to them, and then we feel lighter. They begin to feel less true. And that's when we can experience the true freedom from what's not serving us. And that's just a big piece, especially for those who are caught in these cycles of negative self-talk or not fully owning and acknowledging their worth. But there's nothing wrong with feeling what you do, feeling frustrated or angry or guilty or anxious or ashamed or disappointed or whatever the case may be. That's simply the human experience. But true health and freedom come from knowing then how to navigate those emotions so that we don't stay stuck there. Mm-hmm. And that's what this process does.
I love it. All right.
Let's dive in. So the sequence of points is easy to learn, and I actually have a free gift for your listeners that makes it even easier. If they go to soulsinsynergy.com, that's SOULS in synergy.com /fed and fearless, you can get immediate access to a downloadable handout that has the tapping points so you can tap along. I know many listeners aren't at a point where they can access that. If not, that's no problem at all. I'm going to walk us through the sequence together.
And just so everyone knows, we'll have the link to that in the show notes. If you're in the car or on a walk, don't worry about it. Just go to my website, lauraschoenfeldrd.com, and we'll make sure you get that.
Perfect. So Laura, pick one hand. It doesn't matter which hand. We're not going to alternate sides. And you're going to take 3 or 4 fingers and you're going to apply firm pressure with the fingertips. We'll tap several times on each point, and then we'll move on to the next point. And the sequence is always the same. So we're going to run through it a few times just to get the hang of it. And once you learn it, then it can happen by rote in the background. And I will acknowledge that some listeners might have learned DFT already, and if your sequence is slightly different, that's fine. It's a fluid process, so feel free to follow your own flow. But this is the sequence that I teach, and it works regardless of whether you believe in it. So we're going to start with a nice deep breath, taking one set of fingers to the top of the head, tapping there at the topmost point of the head. And then move the fingertips to inside of the eyebrow. This point is just to the right or left of the bridge of the nose. You're following that eyebrow. And then side of the eye. This point is just adjacent the temple. And again, it's following the eye bone. Under the eye. Again, it's pretty close to the eye. You're tapping on that eye bone. And remember to breathe here, taking a nice full breath. Tapping under the nose. This point is directly between the nose and the upper lip. And then chin crease just beneath the lower lip. The collarbone point is just to the right or left of midline. You have one finger on the collarbone and then a couple of fingers in that indentation beneath it. Nice deep breath, noticing how that feels. And then the underarm point is about a hand width under the armpit. So it's on the side of the body, tapping on the ribs about 4 inches beneath the armpit. And then side of the hand. This point is on the fleshy part of the hand, adjacent the pinky. Let's do that a few times together to get the hang of it. I'll invite you to close your eyes and feel your body as I cue the points. Top of the head, inside of the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the eye, under the nose. Remembering to take nice deep breaths, noticing how your body feels. Chin crease. Collarbone point, under the arm and the side of the body, side of the hand, and back up to the top of the head. Let's pause here for a moment. Take a nice deep breath and tune into your body. And for listeners who can tap along, you might take a moment to acknowledge whatever's coming up for you in your body, mind, or spirit. And Laura, we just did a couple of rounds there. What was that like for you to tap through that sequence of points?
Felt good. I feel like the only one I remember is the side of the hand. I feel like that was always the one that was like the one I felt comfortable doing in public or something. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was cool.
And that's a good little digression here. If you are in public, you can just pick one point and tap kind of discreetly because you might not have time to do the whole sequence, but it can help calm down the body. So great little hack to take with you. Use one of those points when you're out in public. That said, the full sequence is fantastic when you have some time and space for it. And so I'm going to invite you to take it a little deeper. And now let's see, what can we do with that sequence? And I know a lot of listeners come to you with some big fears around food or fitness or some aspect of their health or life. And so what are some common fears that you hear from women who come to you?
Oh, wow. I feel like it kind of depends on who we're talking about. If it's my health clients, I think a lot of the fear is doing the wrong thing when it comes to their health. So, choosing the wrong diet, doing the wrong exercise routine, and I think a lot of that comes down to a lack of self-trust, which I'm sure the tapping can help with. And then my business coaching clients, I think their fear a lot of times, imposter syndrome is a very common one. And then also fear of, again, making the wrong choice when it comes to the direction they want to take their business in.
Yes. And so it sounds like one of the underlying themes is I'm going to make the wrong choice. And part of that stems from a lack of trust in self. Like, I don't know what the best course of action is for myself. And that's often when we seek external validation and look to others to determine our next steps. And you're spot on that tapping can help with this. And so I'm going to invite you in your own space to maybe think about one of these fears or maybe one area of growth in your own life. And I'm going to invite listeners to tap along and feel free to think about what is your big fear or what feels really uncomfortable in your body right now in relation to food or fitness or your business or your life. And maybe it's one that Laura mentioned. Maybe it's one like, I'm afraid of doing the wrong thing. But maybe it's something else. And so whatever it is in your own space, and Laura, you can say silent if you want on this part, or you can speak aloud, whatever feels good to you. But listeners, say it aloud. Say whatever this fear is that you're going to be working on. Say it aloud. Name it. And throughout tapping, I really encourage you to speak into your own space. Something transformative happens when we express audibly what we've kept inside.
So before we get started, I will not speak audibly just because I don't want to distract anybody who's listening.
That's what I figured. And that's why I gave you the chance to opt out. So listeners, speak aloud in your own space, whatever it is that's true for you. And as you say that big fear, that uncomfortable feeling, this area where you feel stuck, this area that you're afraid of making a wrong decision, notice what starts to happen in your body. Be with any physical sensations. Where are they? What do they feel like? What emotions are starting to come up? And then rate the intensity on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the most intense. And feel that fear or that issue or that feeling. Close your eyes and really drop into it fully in your body. And let's take a deep breath and let's get tapping together, top of the head. Say that fear. Say it aloud, whatever it is, as you tap. Deep breath inside of the eyebrow. Say it again. Acknowledge it. I'm afraid of making a wrong decision. I'm such an imposter. Whatever it is, speak it aloud into your own space. Side of the eye, nice deep breath. How does that make you feel in your body? Notice what's coming up. Acknowledge the sensation as you tap. Deep breath under the eye here. Tapping, feeling every uncomfortable feeling. What is it like to feel like an imposter? What is it like to feel stuck that you make a wrong decision every single time? And here's another one, and you're going to make another wrong decision, and you feel worthless and hopeless and stuck in this pattern forever. Feel it. Let it be big. Deep breath under the nose here. Feeling the intensity throughout your body, all this overwhelming name, whatever emotions, sensations are coming up for you, acknowledge them verbally, feel them, deep breath, chin crease. I feel so, put some words to it. Let the feeling be big, let the intensity dial up. Maybe it feels overwhelming. Maybe it feels impossible to change. Maybe you've done this so many times before and you're ready to be done with it. Deep breath, collarbone point. I accept this feeling in my body. Speak those words over yourself. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hard to see, I accept this big fear. I accept that I might make the wrong decision. I accept that I feel worthless right now, or hopeless, or stuck. Deep breath under the arm here. I honor this feeling now. Honor this feeling in your body by giving it a voice, validating it, acknowledging it. Speak aloud to yourself. I honor this feeling now. Side of the hand here, it makes so much sense that I feel this way. And maybe you start to tune into why you're feeling this way. Does it make sense that you're feeling this way? If so, honor that, acknowledge that. Deep breath, top of the head, continuing to tap. I give myself permission to feel this way. Maybe that's a new one for you. Maybe you've been beating yourself up for so long for feeling this way that you've been fighting it. And now give yourself permission to just feel it. It wants to be felt. Deep breath inside of the eye here. I give myself the love and attention I need right now. See how that lands. Maybe it feels refreshing to give yourself the love and attention you need right now. Or maybe you feel resistant. If there's resistance there, acknowledge the resistance. You just want to beat yourself up and get on with it. If that's your truth, again, speak your truth. Feel whatever's true in your body. Continue to tap. Side of the eye, I give my body permission to relax now. Deep breath under the eye. I deeply and completely accept myself exactly as I am. Deep breath under the nose, and I fully honor this fear, this feeling, whatever it is, this stuck point, this uncomfortable sensation. Honor it, accept it, relax into it, give your body permission to express it. And let's pause here with a nice deep breath, keeping your eyes closed if you're in your own space. And I'm going to invite those listeners who are able to tap along to check in with your body and see what's arising now. And if you're listening on your own and you're in the space to do that, you might hit pause and keep tapping at your own pace, acknowledging whatever sensations or emotions or feelings are coming up. You might acknowledge how big and overwhelming and intense this feels. Maybe you have some sort of emotional release, and that's fine. Let that happen. Express it, honor it, accept it, and then maybe you find a deeper layer. Maybe you identify a traumatic memory. If that's the case, flow with it. Continue to tap through it. Tapping helps make it safe to re-experience something that feels deep in your body. And so pause as long as you need to. Continue to tap. For now, though, just in the interest of this example, I'm going to shift us into what an affirmative round of tapping might look like in case listeners are ready to take it in another direction. And so wherever you are in your own place, take a nice deep breath, and we're going to start tapping again at the top of the head. Repeating aloud, if it feels right to you, I'm starting to notice a shift. And maybe feel in your body where you notice something shifting. Deep breath inside of the eyebrow. It feels good to express this fear or feeling or emotion or whatever's coming up for you. Acknowledge that it feels good to express. Side of the eye, perhaps this fear isn't as big as I thought it was. Maybe it seems smaller now. Maybe it doesn't seem as true. If so, acknowledge that. Deep breath under the eye here. Maybe it isn't serving me anymore. That's a new thought. Acknowledge that if that feels true. Maybe you acknowledge this fear with a deep breath, moving the fingertips under the nose. Acknowledge it. Thank you, fear or feeling or belief from my past. Thank you for serving me. I see how you were trying to protect me. Thank it. If it's done its time. Deep breath, chin crease, and I give my body permission to release what no longer serves me. Deep breath, moving to the collarbone point, continuing to tap. It's safe to let go now. It's safe to move. It's safe to release whatever feels good to you. Acknowledge that it's safe to do that and continue to tap. Again, noticing what shifted. And at this point, again, you might pause. You might notice how your relationship with this fear has changed. Maybe you're ready to replace it with a new truth about yourself, or maybe you feel called to actually make a specific action step in your life and you want to tap that into your body. Again, just notice what comes up for you. Feel it. Feel it in your body. Offer it gratitude. This change, this shift that's happening in you. And as we continue to tap together, I'll guide us through some examples of ways that you can anchor it in. And you can speak what feels most true to you. So as you move your hands from the collarbone to the side of the body, maybe you say, I feel lighter. Or I feel free. As you tap on the side of the hand, maybe I feel strong. I feel healthy. Deep breath, top of the head. I have more energy. I have more grace toward myself. Again, finding what feels true and speaking it aloud over yourself. Deep breath inside of the eyebrow. I love my body. I love taking care of my body. I love nourishing my body well. Deep breath, side of the eye. I feel more balanced. I feel healthy. I feel whole. I have support and I'm getting results. Whatever you need, whatever you're being invited into, speak that aloud. Deep breath under the eye. I'm grateful for the health I have now. And I'm open to the possibility of change under the nose. Chin crease. I may struggle, but I'm making progress. Acknowledge the progress that you're making. tapping on the collarbone point, whatever it is you're moving toward. I'm learning to live my purpose. I'm becoming healthier. Acknowledge that with gratitude. And then take a deep breath, tapping under the arm. And it feels so good in my body. Just acknowledging how good that feels. Take a nice deep breath, relax the hands, and check in. Notice if anything shifted. Notice how you feel now. Maybe you even rate the intensity from a 0 to a 10 and notice how you're different from when you started. Again, if you're tapping along, you might pause and keep going. Move with your feelings, stay with your emotions, your sensations. Don't force yourself to a place of compassion or change or understanding. Instead, give yourself full permission to express what feels true, because acceptance expedites the freedom. Trusting that inner guide to bring up whatever needs to be voiced is the key to then often reaching your own surprising resolution. And so, Laura, I'm curious, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was cool. I'm trying to think. I feel like I need to do this. I need to try doing this a little bit because I could definitely feel some of those like negative, negatives in air quotes, sensations when thinking about the negative emotions or like fear-based emotions, that kind of thing. And then going through the positive affirmations, I started to feel that resolve some, not fully, but some. And I'm sure if I was speaking things out loud, it would probably have been more effective. But I'll have to go back and listen and download your worksheet to try it again with the Audible stuff.
Yeah. And it's fantastic to simply create some space in your day to do that, especially around the quote unquote negative self-talk or whatever fears come up. Just acknowledge them, carve out time, be intentional to work through them so they no longer have that same hold on you. And that's true for all of us, regardless of what our fears, our concerns, our worries, our anxieties are. We can create the space to do this process. But the beautiful thing about tapping is we don't need to take too much time. Like sometimes we don't have a big swath of time to really dive into a deep trauma around why that fear originated, and tapping works even if we just have quick snippets of it throughout the day. And that's what I like to encourage people to do, that you can take quick tapping breaks. And even if you don't want to or have time to work through those deeper layers, take tapping breaks, pause periodically, check in with your body, say, what's coming up right now? And maybe it's when you go to get some water, or you switch tasks, you can pause, do a quick sequence of tapping and say, what's coming up right now? Where do I really need to put my time and my energy? Because often we find ourselves getting hijacked by our day, other people's agendas, and coming back to our body, putting our fingertips there, acknowledging what we really need, want, what needs to change, how we really feel, allows us to reclaim our power and decide where and how we expend our energy. And that can be really true for, especially you work with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, like using this to do a quick check-in and see, what is the next most important task? And as you start to do that around all things in your life, whether it's a task or an important conversation or decision you need to make, when you start with the small things, it becomes so much easier. It's kind of like flexing that intuition muscle. As you start to practice checking in with your subconscious and letting it guide these decisions throughout the day, you start to trust yourself more. And I know, Laura, you said that often the women who come to you, there's a lack of trust in themselves. And so you start to build more of this trusting relationship with yourself. And then the bigger decisions in life, the health challenges, the changes you need to make, the decisions you need to make in your business become much clearer and much more manageable. And I found it, like you said, it can apply to business, it can apply to health. And so regardless of who you are, this is a muscle that you can continue to flex. And for those who are more in the food and fitness relationship, trying to tackle some of the health challenges that they might face, use these tapping breaks to coincide with meals or with workouts. Tap before you eat, for example. It's one I encourage all the time. Do a quick round of tapping or two and ask your body to guide you toward what food and how much it needs. Tapping turns off the stress response. So at the very least, it means you're going to digest and assimilate your food better. And then it also downregulates any emotional triggers that might compel you to overeat or undereat or sabotage your nutritional goals. And so it can be a real simple way to start flexing that muscle again. And literally before you exercise too, I know you work with a lot of people who are already fit and in that space. And so ask your body, how do I need to move? How much do I need to move? And let your decisions become more intuitive, more compassionate, more body honoring, rather than stress inducing and compulsive, rigid, or overly disciplined when maybe that's not serving you. And you might be surprised at how simply pausing, tapping, checking in, whether it's before you eat or move or make a decision or have an important conversation, can transform your relationship with yourself and other aspects of your life.
I love it. Now, practical question. When you're doing the sequences, do you recommend switching hands, or is it like just do the one side and it doesn't matter if it's the same side all the time?
It actually doesn't matter since there's a symmetry to both sides of the body. I say if you're getting started, just use one hand until you get fully comfortable with it, because you don't want to be overthinking the hand component. You want to be able to tune into the body and what you're feeling. The emotion is the real key to dropping into the process. So if you get distracted by using different hands, just stick with one. That said, other people like to use both hands or alternate sides. So again, it's as much an art as it is a science. So really make it your own.
Yeah, I just wanted to check because I was like, I wonder if you do it on one side, if you like miss other opportunities, if you're missing the other side. But again, I'm not the expert you are, so I wanted to ask that. Great. Well, I feel like I could ask you so many more questions about this. And I know that you offer a group program that people can check out if they're interested in continuing to do more of this with you.
Yeah, I can speak to that for a moment. Thanks for asking, because a group is incredible when it comes to doing this work. And I can't underestimate, or I can't emphasize how much it really affects your growth and your well-being, because healing and growth do happen in relationship. And so part of the power of tapping comes through the expression, and having our expression received and validated by others can send those healing messages deeper. And certainly a coach or one other person can help shine the light on your blind spots. A coach can help create that safe space for deeper processing, especially if trauma is at the root of your current health struggles or where you are in your business. And I know, Laura, you're a firm advocate for coaching and mentorship and really investing in yourself. And so if this is one area that I'd argue should top the list, that if you have an underlying trauma that's keeping you stuck and you haven't addressed really the somatic, the body level with emotional energetic tools like tapping, then really do get support. Most people not getting the results they want in their health or really in their business, their finances, their relationships, whatever the case may be, there could be an unresolved trauma there. And so that's where doing it in a group setting can be doubly empowering, because you have the support of a coach there, but then you also have community, and that can be a beautiful incubator for doing the work. And I really see that all the time, that even if we gear the process toward one specific member of the group, others tapping along are often blown away by how the process shifts something in their own body. And tapping essentially in a group like this reminds us of a core truth. As human beings, we are profoundly interconnected, and our health depends not only on our relationship with ourselves and our food, our own body, our own mind, but really healthy relationships with others. And I know that's something that's really been put into stark relief given our current pandemic and the cultural climate at large. We're getting the sense that loneliness on a mass scale may be just as perilous as some of the health concerns that are out there. And so being able to create these spaces of genuine connection, both to counter isolation and then to work through transforming our disempowering emotions, can be some of the most courageous work that we undertake for one another. And even after years of being a health practitioner and a coach, I'm still amazed by the results I see with group tapping. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a strong advocate, and I created my own program.
Awesome. And what's the name of your program?
It's called Freedom and Flow, and it's an online global community. We come together each week to tap through our fears and our stressors in real time. And I would just, put out there again that I can't overstate the importance of moving through fears and stressors and uncomfortable emotions in the moment, in real time. Because remember that trauma is any experience that's not fully processed at the time that it happens. And the longer it stays stuck, the more likely we are to get sick. But when we practice this state of freedom and flow consistently, hence the name of the group, in this really embodied way, as through tapping and other practices, we don't suppress that emotion. There is no stuckness. There is no trauma. There's less susceptibility to disease. And so doing this work, really, I consider an ultimate form of preventative medicine. We're really stopping the personal, the familial, the societal, and intergenerational trauma and sickness at its source. And we can do that with one another. We can create this sense of safety and connection for one another. And that's really key, knowing that you can create that safety connection in your own body. You can do it with others. And then you learn to move through life, not filtering everything you experience through the murky lens of your past trauma. And when you do that, you realize, wow, I can handle everything, anything that comes my way. I can become the healthy, vibrant, real fearless woman that I'm meant to be, that I'm designed to be, that I was created to be. And so it's really empowering when you can step into a place of doing that on a consistent basis.
Awesome. Well, I love it. And I have one more question for you that I ask all of my podcast guests. And I didn't prep you for it, so it's going to come out of a little left field. But what do you believe makes a person more than a body?
Yeah, our stories. Sometimes our bodies, they're the mark of our stories. And so our body is important as the physical bearer of our stories, these scars, these struggles that are written on our skin, but we're more than the marks on our body. We're more than that body. We're more than all the scars. And I recognize that myself since I had a lot of injuries. I'm more than all my scars and imperfections and blemishes and injuries. They may have once felt like an obstacle or a source of condemnation, but now they're a real catalyst. The body's pain is simply a message. It's an opportunity. And when I embody the message, when I declare it through my life and my work, when I embrace the opportunity in it, my pain gets transmuted into purpose. And I see each of us that way. I see each of the clients that I sit with, the groups that I lead, were these incredible masterpieces, these uniquely created beings to do good works and to ourselves create and contribute to the world in meaningful ways. And maybe we experience some health setbacks along the way. Maybe we even lose some part of ourselves or some part of our body, a limb, an organ, or maybe, like me, we fracture an ankle or something else, or experience hardship or endure unimaginable trauma, but we're still whole. We're still whole. Our identity and our worth don't change. Our experiences simply enrich the plotline, this narrative, this story, and our bodies become the vehicle for living that story. And so our bodies will perish, but our stories speak the true and eternal language of hope, healing, transformation, and redemption.
Well, that was awesome. I feel like, are you sure you didn't know I was going to ask that question? Because that was very well-spoken and a great answer, one of the more unique answers we've gotten. So, Stacy, it's been so awesome to get to chat with you and to get to tap with you as well. And like I said, I'm definitely going to go back and listen to this episode myself and do the work off air so that way I can really experience the full benefit. And like I said, we will definitely link to your free handout and the program that you offer. Is there anywhere else our listeners should go if they want to connect with you further?
Yeah, simply soulsensenergy.com. You can find out more about freedom and flow right there. You can reach out to me personally. I can make sure that's in the show notes as well. For those who feel they might need to go deeper, I'm happy to be a supportive resource in the community. So feel free to reach out, check out the website, grab your handout. Remember to tap. It's free, it's accessible to you anytime, and it's highly effective. Thanks so much, Laura, for tapping along with me, for inviting this conversation about trauma and deeper healing. It's been such a joy to have this time with you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Stacy, and thanks to everyone for hanging out and tapping with us. And we will see you here next time on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Laura here again. Thank you so much for listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Your time is your most precious resource, and I'm so grateful that you choose to spend some of it with me. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast and want to continue supporting my work on this show, I would very much appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes. By leaving a 5-star review, you'll help others find the show and help me spread my message to a larger audience. You can go to fedandfearless.com/review to find a button that'll take you right to iTunes to leave your review. And I have a special gift for you as a thank you for helping me share the podcast. Once you leave your review, send a screenshot of the review to hello@lauraschoenfeldrd.com. Or you can DM it to me on Instagram @LauraSchoenfeldRD. Once you do, I'll share a free copy of my Overcoming Undereating ebook. Then share a favorite podcast episode in your Instagram stories and tag me @LauraSchoenfeldRD. And I'll also give you a free copy of my 14-day calorie challenge recipe guide. Together, these bonuses are worth $44 and will help you become Fed and Fearless. And you'll get them absolutely free for just helping me grow the podcast. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next week for the latest episode.